So either welcome or welcome back to Plant Families in Our Foods Series 2, Week 2. This is going to be fun. I have a slight warning. The family this week is going to be a little bit challenging, as in I still have trouble identifying it sometimes without having to go through a process of elimination. But that's what makes botany fun, is when you look at things and you don't necessarily know who they are. So I hope to share a little of that excitement with you about the uncertainty and the unknown of finding plant and not knowing quite what they're all about. I think that we'll have fun with this one anyway. Let's see here. As usual, I want to remind people that even if I go in a little bit, a bit into vocabulary, then the idea of this workshop is not about tons of vocabulary. It's not about cramming people's heads with all of these terms that they have to remember. It's not even necessarily about being able to perfectly identify this family that we're going to go into. It's more about just learning how to see patterns within plants, learning what makes you excited when you're looking at these plants, an invitation to keep exploring. So there's no pressure. I just want people to remember that there's no pressure. Are we ready? People ready? Yeah, okay, awesome. Here we go then. I am going to share my screen. There we go. And we'll start. Welcome to Plant Families in Our Foods and Nature Journaling, Series 2, Week 2. As usual, we'll start with our 3 pictures. And each of these pictures, unless otherwise noted, are from Creative Commons. I owe them so much. Hopefully the next time I do this series, I'll be able to have all my own photos. And as usual, with each of these photos, we'll take first 2 minutes to sketch whatever you can. You don't have to worry about making it perfect or getting the whole thing, just sketch whatever you can with each of these. And then after that, we'll take an additional minute to add any words or numbers to our pictures. Starting now. Let's take about 10 more seconds. And there's our 2 minutes. Now we can take 1 more minute to add any words, questions, observations, describing words, labels, and numbers to our pictures. Starting now. Let's take another 10 seconds. And there's our minute. Okay, let us go for our next picture. And once again, let's take 2 minutes to do a quick little sketch starting now. Let's take about 10 more seconds. And that's our 2 minutes. Now let's take another minute to add any words or numbers to our pictures, starting now. And there's our minute. Sorry. And then our final picture before I reveal our family of the day. Here we go. Let's take our 2 minutes to do our sketch. And if it seems like a lot, you can either do a gesture sketch or just a small piece of it. You don't have to do every detail. And let's take another 10 seconds. And there's our 2 minutes. Now we'll just take one more minute to add any words or numbers to our pictures, starting now. Let's take another 10 seconds. And there's our minute. All right. Are you all ready to find out the family of the day? Yeah, we're ready? All right, here we go. Welcome to the Amaranth family. I see cheering. So this is our lovely friend. This one here, I believe it's probably a Love Lies Bleeding, but I'm not totally sure. All I know is that it is an Amaranth proper. These are the flowers of one of the members that I tried to take a picture of. But I should point out that this particular family is a conglomeration of a whole bunch of other ones that used to be all of their own. They decided to play musical plants big time with this one. Our main family here is the properly known Amaranthaceae, named for the genus. And I found a really interesting etymology with this. I'd assumed because of a little bit of Spanish, like speaking Spanish background, that it had something to do with love because of the whole amar, similar to amor, but it actually stands for something else. The a in it stands for the not, sort of like anaerobic or amoral. You get the idea, the anti. The mer is for to rub away or harm. And that might make you think of marring something, or of the root of more, morbid, mortis, etc. So rubbing away or harm, and then anthus for flowers. So all of that together means unfading flower. You'll notice that in bouquets, if you have them, then they remain a really lovely color for a long time unless the mice eat them. And even then they'll still be pretty. So that was kind of fun finding out the history of the name Amaranthaceae, what it means. I mention a particular former family because so many of them have wound up in this one. There was a family called the Quinopodiaceae, a long way of saying goose foot. And now it's within the Amaranth family as a subfamily. This one right here is from the goosefoot family, sorry. It is, I'm not entirely sure, but it's a garden weed that I am very fond of. Let me see if I can try to go backwards a little bit. This one here, does anybody happen to know what this one is? You can call out if you want. I think I remember hearing somebody was eating this tonight.
It makes me think of sumac, but I have no idea if sumac is even closely related.
Not sumac, but I like the guess. Any other guesses? And somebody was eating this tonight. I know I saw it in the chat.
Is it quinoa?
Yep.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yep. I see that you and Rebecca both said that. Yep, it is. It's a quinoa. Yep. And lamb's quarters is also related to.
And someone said dock, and I was also thinking it seemed kind of like dock, but I have no idea if that's related.
Dock is
dock.
Oh, go ahead.
Is that related?
You see, that's when I get dock mixed up a lot, but dock itself is, interestingly, dock is in the Polygonaceae, which is the buckwheat family, different family.
Right.
But I also would get that mixed up, so I'm glad I'm not alone. But yeah, it does.
It's just that cluster, that really close cluster of sort of individually uninteresting flowers that are all clustered together to make something really interesting and weird shaped, I think. Make me
Yep.
think of it.
It looks a lot like dock, doesn't it? These leaves, though, these are goosefoot leaves.
Yeah.
The quinoa was in the Quinopodiaceae.
Okay, so are these the flowers or are these the fruits in this picture?
Now this, I'm thinking, I'm not entirely sure. It looks an awful lot like it's becoming actual quinoa, though. I'm thinking that maybe it's the grain itself, but I'm not totally sure.
This is the kind of plant I'd take a magnifying glass to for sure.
Oh yeah, same here. And this one here, does anybody know this one?
It's a succulent of
Ooh.
some sort, or it looks very succulent.
Looks
If
like a
anybody's
seed,
into,
like a seed, something that grows by the sea, but I don't know.
you're absolutely right. If you were to go,
Pickleweed.
yep, pickleweed. If you were to go to the marsh, you'll see this one everywhere. This is pickleweed. And it is edible too. Very
Oh,
salty. And then, oops, sorry. And then this one here, it's some kind of a pigweed. It's one of those ones that you find in the garden. This one here is in Amaranth, is in the proper Amaranthoideae, the proper Amaranthus subfamily. So this, in fact, this is an Amaranthus. So that's why I included this one at the very front. Whereas the pickleweed is in something else, Salicornioideae, because like I said, they like to combine all of the different little subfamilies in this one. So I wanted to have representatives from a lot of different ones. So let us look into our flower a little bit. I always try to keep the same diagram at the beginning, just so we always have a good starting point, the same starting point. So you might see this in a textbook. We have our stem, we have our sepals here, little bits of vegetation that kind of cup the flower. We have our petals right on top of the sepals, often brightly colors. We have our stamen here, which makes pollen. And we have our pistil here that makes seeds. And that's how I remember it, is PSSP. Pistils make seeds and stamens make pollen. Now, those are the basics, but our family this week's a little different. And I'm not even totally sure that this is all of the members in the family. I just know that this is at least the Amaranthoideae. We have, instead of having sepals, we have bracts, 3 of them. They're often colored. You might see that's the really big, like reddish kind of magenta bits that stand out, although sometimes they're green. And they pointy. We have tepals, because the books that I've read said that they're sepals and that there are 0 petals, but sometimes they're weird colors, so I just call them tepals. There's either 4 or 5, depending, I think, on the species. And that's the pattern of most dicots. And there's the same number of anthers. The anthers tend to be notched into the tepals or the sepals. And then we have a pistil here. It's usually superior, and I'll explain that in a second. And there's often more than one carpel within it. Carpel is another word for pistil, except that it's when you have more than one of them together. So they're united carpels, usually 2 to 3. So look for 2 to 3 styles and stigmas sticking out. I'll give folks a second to copy that down. And I will also, in a second, I'll be able to explain a little bit more. Today, we're going to go a little bit more into pistils and ovaries and whatnot. Does anybody have any questions so far? You can call out too. I can't see everybody, so I can't see if anybody raises their hand. But if anybody has questions, you can call out and ask.
What is an anther?
An anther. Oh, you're absolutely right. This actually should have probably said stamen. My apologies.
Okay.
An anther is a part of a stamen. So when you have so you have, let's see here. So this whole entire thing here is a stamen, yeah? This bit right up here, that kind of, the strand here, it's called the filament. And then these little ones right here that have all the pollen in them, these are the anthers.
Thank you.
Thank you. I should have written stamens instead, but I was not. Oh, goodness, I was being careless, so thank you. This is a really challenging family for me.
So what was the tepals?
Yeah, it's another way of saying when you're not sure if they're a petal or a sepal. I know that the textbooks tend to say that these are sepals, but I'm not sure if they're colorful or not, so that's why I put in tepal, also because I didn't want to accidentally mess up. But yeah, tepal is another word for when you can't distinguish between a petal or a sepal.
For real, or is it made it up?
Oh no, it's I've seen the, ooh, where'd it go? Sorry, hold on. I've seen the word used to describe, for example, magnolias. when you have
Yeah.
all of what looks like petals. We're not always sure whether they're petals or whether they're sepals. The other thing is when you have lilies, you think of lilies as having 6 petals, but that's not true. 3 of those are petals and 3 of those are sepals, but the sepals are petaloid sepals because they are colorful and look a lot like petals. So you could call them that, or you could, if you're not sure which one is which, you'd say tepal.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I've got this lily here, and I was drawing it the other day, but I wasn't sure what this is. You see that this bit here?
I think I do. Is it the part with the bit that kind of smears on everything else? Is that what you're pointing at? It's
Yeah. The messy stuff. Yeah.
the messy stuff.
It's
Okay.
it's like a little slipper, and it's connected to this little filament or whatever it's called in the
Yep.
middle. So it's joined very delicately in the middle, and it's wobbly. And
Yep.
I think it's probably got the pollen. Has it got the pollen then? Is that?
Yep.
Is that?
Yep, that's the one with the
That is-
pollen, and those little bits like the slippers, those are the anthers. Yep.
And then what's this one in the middle of it all? So you've
Oh, I'm
got
s-
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these with look like little slippers, and then this one here in the middle, it's got nothing. Is
Mhm.
that the thing? This thing here? Can you see that?
I can. That
Yeah.
one in the middle there, that is the pistil. And we're going to go into the different parts of it in just a second. So you have perfect timing.
Oh, okay. And then it's sort of joined with this little green bumpy thing. It's just amazing. I was just looking at it. I've never looked at it so closely before, and I thought, oh, what are all those bits? Thank you.
Beautiful. I totally relate. When you start to look inside of the flowers, they're just beautiful. Oh yeah, sorry, here. In fact, speaking of which, okay, sorry, this was kind of a lot. In a second, I guess we'll have one more slide and then we'll go into the things about the pistils. But here are some of the key characteristics. There's kind of a lot. So you don't have to write down every word. I might even recommend, if you can, turning some of these into bits that you put onto your drawings like diagrams. But I'm sorry that there's so much written here. As I said, this is a very difficult family to talk about. Some of the members are annuals, others are perennials, and sometimes shrubs. What that pretty much means is that you're not going to find trees of this plant. And a lot of the plants are very temporary, which means that you'll see them for a bit, and then eventually you'll see them becoming tumbleweeds and rolling down the road. And that's on purpose. That's part of how they reproduce. If they roll down and down and down with their tumbleweed selves, then they spread their seeds that way. So any of the members have oval shaped leaves. You might see that with the amaranth that we've been looking at. And some of them will have very subtly toothed edges. Not a whole bunch of teeth on the edges, not consistently either, just maybe 3 or 4 per leaf. And if you see them and you can see them particularly well, then that's a pretty good indicator that you're looking at a goosefoot. That's what makes the goosefoot family called that, is because they thought that the leaves looked a bit like the shape of a goose's foot, I guess. So that's a little something about those leaves. My next criteria is densely packed clusters of annoyingly small flowers. And that tends to be my biggest one, where I look at that and I go, are you an amaranth or are you something else? You have densely packed clusters of annoyingly small flowers that I have a really hard time looking at closely, then I'm going to wonder. And then the next big trait I would think are the bracts, the ones that really stick out. They're probably the easiest part of the flower to see are those bracts, even though they're not technically the flower, they're technically beneath the flowers.
These annoyingly small flowers a technical term?
I'm sure they do. I want to say that they could be a spike, but I'm not totally sure because it's hard to get close enough to tell if they've got little stems on each of them or not.
I was wondering if the annoying part was a botanical term.
No, it's
Okay.
definitely not a botanical term. Some people will
Just
find
checking.
Some people will think that this should say galvanizing instead of annoying, but I am not those other people. Yes, I like that. Densely packed clusters of wonder, Rebecca says. I like that. That's a lot more complimentary. I'm actually very thankful to this family because we eat so many things in it that taste delicious. 4 to 5 sepals, like the book says, although I put in tepals because I question things. 0 petals, 4 to 5 stamens. In other words, however many sepals there are will be the exact same number of stamens. Plus, I'm wondering, what's the point of having the bracts if you don't have any petals? Anyways, never mind. The pistil has a superior ovary, 2 to 3 united carpels. So that's why you look for 2 to 3 stigmas poking out. And again, we'll be getting to that in a second. This particular thing I'll have to explain next week with our next family. Most of the flowers are bisexual, which means that they have both the pistils and the stamens, but others are unisexual, which means that they would only have one of those. Maybe some of the flowers will only have the pistils, and some of the other flowers will only have the stamens. And when that happens, it can be either monoecious, which means that you have both kinds of flowers on the same plant, or dioecious, which means that they're on separate ones. But again, I'll be getting into that a lot more next time, where it's more of a thing with our next week's family. And they're very weedy and seem to prefer disturbed soils. That kind of helps, weirdly. I like that, bunches within bunches. There we go. I'll give people a bit more time to copy that down if they'd like to. And any questions I welcome. So if anybody has any questions at this point. Another thing is that if it seems like a lot to remember, that's because it is. And so instead of trying to remember every precise thing, sort of look for those a little bit at a time when you're looking at a plant. You don't have to remember everything, but if you can just, if you start to think, oh, bracts, what do bracts look like in a plant? And then you lean a bit closer and you look, where you start to think, what about this ovary position? Maybe I don't remember the exact word, but I wonder what it looks like in comparison to everything else. So again, this is not so that you have to memorize all of this. It just helps you have more things to look for when you're looking at plants, more things to keep track of in your nature journal. I don't know if it means that they're not insect pollinated as much. I think that's a good question. I think I need to observe a lot more to see who's on them. A lot of pictures that I found, though, had looked like beetles on them, some kind of beetle. And from what I can see, it is kind of weird that there are no petals, because I don't know many other plants or families that have that, but I'm not sure what it means. And as always, let the plant that's in front of you tell you that. If there's things that we don't know, then just listen to the plant. If you're looking at a plant and you're thinking, but if it's Amaranthaceae, then you're supposed to have, 5 of these tepals, and then instead it only has 4, or if it's being a weirdo and has only 3, then you'd say, okay, then fine, 4 or 3. Maybe you look at some others just to compare, but no matter what, let the plant that's in front of you tell you. Do people need a bit more time to write things down, or should I move on to the next slide? I think people might need a couple more seconds, and then we'll move on. And when we move on, we'll talk a little bit more about ovaries. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to move on to our next one. And here's a little word about ovaries. And again, we'll get into the whole monoecious dioecious thing next week. So here's our basic diagram again. This is our pistil, which you've seen before, but here are the parts of them. They tend to have 4 parts. Okay, so if you picture when I picture a pistil, or at least the textbook example, I picture a vase. Here at the bottom of the vase, that's where the ovary is. It's where the ovules are, and that's where all the seeds get made. The neck of the vase here is called the style. I'm not sure why. And then the very top of the vase is a stigma. And if Susanna's looking at her lily, she might notice that the stigma at the top is a bit darker than the rest and has kind of an interesting pattern to it. The stigma is where the pollen gets received and then fertilizes. Now, Sometimes you'll hear botanists talking about superior or inferior ovaries. I kind of scowl at my other botanist friends when they say that kind of thing because I think it's not good for a plant's self-esteem. But they have a meaning, so here's that meaning. Superior ovary is when the pistil, and the ovary being the bottom part of that pistil, is above the rest of the parts. So that means that the sepals are underneath, the petals are underneath, and the anthers are underneath. The ovary here is on top. And so we call it hypogynous because the other flower parts are beneath the female parts. Then we have another kind of superior ovary, except that in this case, it's sort of like halfway. And I'm not sure why this doesn't have a special term of its own unless I just haven't learned it yet. But this is where everything is kind of half and half. We call that perigynous, which is when the other flower parts are kind of around the ovary. So everything's kind of on the same spot. But for some reason, they consider that to still be a superior ovary. But you might double check that, maybe question some other botanists and be like, hey, tell me answers now. You can tell what I'm going to do after this. And that's from what I've read, that's where that whole hypanthium thing comes from, which we learned about with the roses. Hypanthium meaning sort of beneath, and then anthium meaning, I guess, either the anthers or the entire flower. So we have beneath flower, so that's the cup. And then here's the inferior ovary where it's beneath everything else, even the sepals are above it and everything kind of pinches, and then you get this kind of cute little swollen bit of the flower. So then in that case, it's epigynous, which is atop the female parts. So those are little things about the ovaries. And in the case of the amaranth, because they're so ridiculously tiny that it's hard to see, I don't know whether it's this kind of superior or whether it's this kind of superior. So unfortunately, we're a little bit out of luck with that, which is fun. That means we all have field homework. Yay.
Okay, can I ask, the ovary is the part that will develop into a fruit if there's a fruit, right?
Yep.
So can you, if you're looking at a fruit, I mean, a lot of fruits, you can kind of see the remnants of the old flower at the end of it. Can you tell from the fruit whether it has a superior or inferior ovary? I feel like all the fruits I can think of, like if you might see like at the sort of the butt end of the apple, there's those little like little thingies poking in. Are those the bracts or the petals or something from the flower? Or
Yep.
does that mean that has an inferior ovary then, because the flower, because the apple was below the flower?
Yep. Because the apple is there between what I think of as being, I honestly think that there may be like sepals. I think that there may be sepals that kind of clung onto it, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, but because like a lot of those flowers, the petals just fall away, right?
Yep. But because there are those little bits hanging on there, then I think of that as being that the fruit developed between those clingy little sepals and the stem. So that's a really good indicator of whether you've got a plant that has a superior or an inferior ovary. Is where the rest of the parts are afterwards. That's a great way of looking. It's a great way of finding clues.
Whereas raspberry grows, and you've got those bracts or sepals or whatever, or sepals or whatever they are, that's between the raspberry and the stem.
Yep.
So would that have been? I can't remember from your class if the rose. Wait, that is in the rose family. Yes, it is.
It is.
And does that have a superior ovary?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to go look at all my roses. Okay.
From what I picture, it is. Yeah. From what I picture, that as a superior ovary. The roses are those ones that have kind of weird patterns because they don't have a set pattern among them. Because apples are in the roses, the raspberries are in the roses, and then you have the rose itself, and a lot of them have the hypanthium, or at least the ones that we breed do, just to be confusing. And yet blueberries have it on the top. So
you need to go look at more plants.
If a plant ovary doesn't see well, then does that mean it has astigmatism? I like that. Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, another thing, if anybody has any amazing plant puns, please put them in the chat. They cheer me up so much. Thank you. I love the plant puns. All right, here we go. Our next one is what foods are an Amaranthaceae? And this is one I'm going to encourage people to call out. Some of them you might have already heard, but what foods do you think are in this lovely family we're studying this week?
Well, isn't there a grain itself called amaranth? Emmer that you can eat, cook and
Yeah.
eat?
Yep, you can eat amaranth,
Amaranth, thank you.
and it's delicious.
And the quinoa.
Yep, and the quinoa. There are some other ones too.
Pickleweed technically you can eat.
True.
Not a
Is
lot of-
asparagus one of those ones that got lumped into this family, or is it? I thought that's its
Not
own family.
asparagus. Now that one's a weird one, and that one happens to also be monocot.
Oh, of course.
But we'll find that one later on. Not millet, although that's a good guess.
We're
Now,
gonna go
some of the ones that
way
I'm thinking
out on- oh, good.
are leafy greens. That's a hint for you.
Hmm.
Leafy greens.
Broccoli. That's
Not broccoli, but that's a good guess.
Cauliflower.
no.
What was that other one? Sorry.
Cauliflower.
Chard? Did you say chard? It is chard. Sorry.
Silver beet. We call it silver beet here, but it's chard. It's the same thing, I think.
It's chard. And also spinach. I can't remember what one rhubarb is in, though. You'd think I'd know by now. Y'all ready to find out? I think y'all got most of them. So we have amaranth and quinoa, like we talked about. We have spinach. I think I saw that Rebecca guessed spinach. Beets and chard. Now this one's interesting because they're pretty much, if I'm remembering rightly, they're the exact same species of plant. Just one has been bred and selected for having the lovely big leaves. That would be the chard. And the other one is selected for the root. That'd be the beet. So beets and chard are the same. And then epazote, which was possibly that garden weed that I tried to take pictures of earlier today. And then we have some
Speaking as a lover of beet greens, sharp greens don't taste nearly as good.
Yep.
Beet greens almost have like a more beety taste to it. Like I hate beets, but I love the greens. The greens are like the best thing about the family.
And I think that that's one of the things is that when they select and when they breed, then it does change the flavor ever so subtly. When you think about the way that broccoli and cauliflower taste similar, but yet slightly different from each other, or that and collard greens and some other ones. And yet there's like 6 of those that are the exact same species, just different selections. I believe broccoli and cauliflower are the exact same species of those.
What about celery root and celery?
I think that they're both apiaceous, but again, possibly selected for differently. I don't know very much about those two. And yeah, I like what Jasmine's observing here about how beets seem to fit in with the magenta and the purple. But yeah, that some of them are basically the same. I don't know about the turnips though. But yeah, lamb's quarters in the family too.
I thought we determined that the turnips were brassica. That's why I was making that connection.
Yep, I think that they are.
Yeah, there's some root that's a brassica, but I forgot. But
There is, yeah.
with these beets and all these purple, vividly purple plants, can anything be used for dyes?
Some of them are, if I'm remembering rightly. I think I remember that some of the amaranths especially are used for dyes. Okay, are you all ready for the the fun part? Now this is going to be a little bit hard for me because I'm going to have to kind of juggle with the whole putting up the polls thing. Like when I do this, I'm pretty sure nobody sees that, do they? Nope. So I'm going
Yeah, I'm here now.
I am.
Just got here. Sorry, sorry,
Nope.
I'm so late.
Thank you.
So if you want to make me co-host, I can do the polls. if you'd like.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, sorry to keep you on pins and needle that long. There's a poll. Okay.
Oh no, you're totally fine. I'm just grateful whenever you're here because just all of the help that you give. I'm nothing but grateful. So thank you. And
All
so
right. You want me to launch it yet, or you want to do the picture first?
I'll do the picture. Are y'all ready? Drum roll, please. Let us play. Spot the Amaranthaceae. Sorry, me and my words today. And is the poll launched?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Anne.
And I think people know they can move the poll around if it's blocking their view. Just drag it.
And like
Man, this is tough.
usual, I want to remind people not to stress out. The poll, not so much about getting it right, It's more about just learning how to spot the differences in the families. And
I'm
learning,
not stressing out. I'm having great fun agonizing over this.
oh, well, good. That's the botany spirit. Just more about learning how to see those differences and sort of question them and begin to identify them.
So we have 10 out of 16 participants so far have answered.
Excellent.
Somehow I can't vote right now. I don't see the little voting.
Ah. Are you a co-host, Heather?
I don't think so.
Excuse me.
There's 13 out of 16.
No worries. We'll give people about 10 more seconds. And if you don't guess, that's okay too. Again, this is just learning. And it should tell you something that I have a hard time with these families. I included one in here that I kept on mistaking for being an amaranth that wasn't.
I lost my voting box, so don't worry about me. I don't know where it went. It just disappeared.
Y'all ready?
Okay.
Y'all ready to find out the answer? Yeah,
I'll put B.
here we go. It was C, which is spinach. Now, I used to regularly get B mixed up. For the longest time, I thought that B was an amaranth. It turns out it is called pellitory of the wall and is related to stinging nettle, of all things.
Ooh.
It's not actually stingy, though. It's just related to it.
Nettles are supposed to be edible, so you know.
So
maybe you can do it. So,
this one over here in A,
is that a monocot?
I don't think any of these are monocots.
Well, because there's a leaf on the side that I thought maybe had parallel veins.
Oh, but
I don't know if it's part of the same plant. An A, yeah.
Oh, okay. No wonder. No, this is a different plant, but the plant over here is probably a monocot. It's true. But this one right here is Ambrosia chamasonis, also known as silver beach fir. I just happen to really like the flowers that they make.
Really cool. I love
This
it.
one here is pellitory of the wall. And then this one right here is our amaranth, the spinach. And what I'm noticing between these two that's helping me is kind of the clusters and the way that the clusters occasionally look a little bit spiral staircasey, a lot like the quinoa did at the beginning. Y'all ready for round two?
Oh, yeah.
Righty, here we go.
Let's see, stop sharing. Okay, is this working? Hang on, I'm going to close it and start again. Relaunch poll, here we go. Ta-da!
People have the poll?
I'm not seeing any answers yet. Are people, yep, there's an answer. So some people have the poll.
Anne.
Slow to answer because it's hard.
Ah.
And remember, if it seems difficult, it's because I did that on purpose. I'm a very, very bad teacher. Yes, I am. I intentionally did things difficult.
So once again, I think we have 13 out of 16. So that's probably all we'll get, Ivea.
In that case, are y'all ready to find out the answer? Okay, here we go. It was letter A, chard. Chard and beautiful flowers.
Is chard one of those plants that if you let it go to flower, then it ends up like it's like too late to pick the leaves?
Not sure about that.
Because I don't know. I know a lot of herbs and things like that.
I can actually answer that because my husband grows chard, and I would say, yeah, it gets, I mean, you can still eat it, but it's a little bitter, like most things. you just really want to eat before they get to seed. But it's still perfectly edible. It just doesn't taste what I said. So I should have gotten that one right because I've seen chards in seed,
I like the process of elimination.
but I did not. So that should make everyone else feel better.
No worries. But I think it's hard to tell these apart. And I intentionally included B in here because I knew that that'd make it more challenging. This one here. Go ahead.
Plantain?
It is, it's a plantain.
That reminds me of something like those Sicilian funerals. They have those long ones.
So the Baltimore checker spot butterfly, it's one of its host plants.
And with this one, the big was the shape of the leaf. And also just some of the way that the leaf look. Tends to be that these guys are a bit narrower, not nearly as big and round. They're a bit more oval shaped. Some of them go quite thin as well. But it's really, really hard to sometimes tell. But yeah, this is...
Now, if B is plantain, I thought plantain was like the banana looking stuff.
I know that that's where it gets confusing, is that they have certain like bananas that they call plátano or plantain. In this case, though, this is a different thing. This is plantago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Plantagenaceae, I think, this
Yep.
family.
Yep, different family. Yep, Plantagenaceae.
Name for that.
And I'm sure people know what this one is. Anybody know what that one is and is brave enough to say it out loud?
No.
Wait, I think I remember. It looks like Sochi is saying something, but I think you're muted, Sochi. What were you gonna say?
I said I know it, but because I need it after that last quiz.
Yeah. So yeah, this one over here, I'll just put it into the chat because I'm not sure if YouTube has a thing about this or not. But yeah. There you go. That's what it is. Okay. Anyway, y'all ready for for round 3? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Round 3, last round. Let's play spot the Amaranthaceae.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
So we are again at 13 out of 16 answers.
Okay. I'll give folks about 10 more seconds just in case. And again, please don't worry. This is a really difficult family, really difficult. If it hadn't been for the fact that it has so many edibles in it, I probably wouldn't have included it because it's that difficult. But, you know, variety is the spice of life. Next week should be not quite like this. All right, are folks ready? Ready to find out the answer? Okay. It was B, saltbush. Also known as the atriplex. Does anybody have any things that they see that might tell them that this is from our family?
You know, the shape of the leaves, and it was making me think of the last week's family. Just looks very blueberry-ish to me, but the not the sort of dustiness of it, but the shape. But yeah, the flowers or fruits or whatever those are totally different.
Yeah, the red pigment, flowers maybe.
Yep, the deep red pigment.
Yeah.
There's a lot. It's very amaranth.
Are those flowers or are those the seeds or the fruits?
Hard to tell. I'm guessing that they Yeah, it's really hard for me to tell, honestly.
So that's what makes me think that there's like sumac so much, those fuzzy sort of berry looking things.
This one over here, does anybody know this one?
Mint family?
Not the mint family. This one over here is one of the ones we get mixed.
Nettle.
Not nettle. This is the nettle over here in C.
Yeah, that was nettle. Yeah.
Over here, C is the stinging nettle. But this one over here is one of the rumexes, one of the docks.
Oh,
Oh, okay. And are those the flowers or the seeds or
They look
really weird looking?
It's difficult to know. I'm thinking that they're flowers transitioning to seeds. Part of why I included that is because I get it mixed up. And also I thought it was interesting to note that you can see a distinctive place where the flowers begin, or at least the seeds begin over here on the dock. They also
Whorls.
in little whirls here, and then here, and then here, and then here. Whereas this one is more like a spiral staircase, everything bunched with.
oh, okay.
So I thought that was helpful.
Is A, the thing that confused me on A is I'm sure it's not this family, but it looks like it has a square stem. So that's why I was thinking mint, even though those flowers or seeds or whatever look nothing like what I would recognize. But it looks like it has a square stem.
Some of them will have, maybe, I'm not sure if it's an exact square stem, but some of the stems in different plants will have very distinctive edges, which is interesting to notice when they have this. You might notice the same thing when you see chard or beets flowering too. They have stems that seem to have distinctive corners. And then this one here is our stinging nettle. And the clue in this one that it's not part of the amaranth is because the teeth and the margins are extremely regular and all around. Whereas if it were an amaranth or a quinopode, it might have maybe 1, 2, 3 teeth on it total, but not all the way around. But this was a difficult one on purpose because it's difficult in the field.
I don't know what salt bush is, so I thought it doesn't have any edges. So like it doesn't have the jagged edges you said before. And it looked like a succulent leaf to me. But yeah. This I don't see the leaves
Yeah, the edges are kind of
at
weird
all.
on me.
Does saltbush grow in like dry conditions?
I want to say sometimes. All I know is that it's able to withstand a ton of salt by storing it within the leaves. So I think that some might grow in sort of deserty places are somewhat similar, and others,
Yeah.
ones I know of, grow near Crissy Field, near the
It has
marsh.
that sort of like that kind of fuzzy
Mhm.
coating looking like on the leaves, which I would, or waxy, I'm not sure, which makes me think of,
Yep.
Some succulents are like that.
And so then just a quick little recap. We have, and I always forget to put the picture up again. Oh, well. So we have our annuals and perennials, sometimes shrubs, sometimes goosefoot shaped leaves, though not always, as you've seen. Dense clusters of small flowers. I didn't put annoying this time, but that's okay. Oh, wait, I put it down here. That's convenient. Colorful bracts per flower. Flower features often really hard to see. Histo with superior ovary to the three-netted carpels. Prefers disturbed soils, and some become tumbleweeds. Now that one, I think I also really like this particular clue. I think I saw that Rebecca asked a question earlier if that's why we have so many of them that we make into food items. But either way, this is kind of a good thing to notice too, is what takes over the soil first when it's disturbed. And sometimes that can tell you a lot about who to expect. And as I added this one, process of elimination. Is this another family with annoyingly small flowers like Polygonaceae, which is the buckwheat, Urticaceae, which is the stinging nettle? And this is an easy way to remember. How do you remember it's stinging nettle? Because it hurts. Or the Plantagenaceae after the plantains. So that will sometimes help. And I think that was all I had for tonight. That was fun.
Oh, wait, you said that the docks are in Polygonaceae, right?
They are. They're part of the
And
buckwheat.
that, and that picture that was that one part A and the last one was a dock, and it had those very like edges to the stems. So polygon is like a shape that's got flat straight sides and edges. Maybe that is a characteristic. I don't know if you're going to get to that family eventually, but
It could be. I'm actually not sure if it's a characteristic of the stem or not. It's possible, but I always thought of it as a characteristic of the seeds because of how the seeds look.
okay, I don't know my that well.
But I mean, I could be wrong about that one. I don't think we're going to be getting to it this time, but I'm not going to guarantee, especially because there might be some fun. I don't know. I'm not planning for these two to be my only 2 series. I'm planning for there to be a 3 and a 4 as well. Although the others aren't going to be about ones that we have in our foods. One of them is just going to be about random species that you're going to see when you're like walking around. And
This means I can send you all my plant photos.
And then another one, I think that somebody wanted to know specifically about desert-like ones, or ones that can withstand really desert-like conditions. So that might be kind of fun. So you'll see. We're going to be a bit more. Oops, sorry. That was my alarm saying it's 6. And so I'm going to be a bit more creative with the other two, Yatu that I'm planning to create. But first, I wanted to reteach parts 1 and 2 before I get into all of that. But that's our week 2. Amaranthaceae. Wish y'all a happy Valentine's with the Love Lies Bleeding family. Woohoo!